right, guys, it's time for another leftover makeover. So say you had pizza this week, okay? Say you had some pizza, you made some homemade pizza, you got a lot of pizza ingredients left. You got a little bit of marinara. You might have some olives or whatever you would like to put on your pizza. Might have some vegan pepperoni, maybe some leftover cheese. Well, I'm going to show you how to make my homemade vegan pizza rolls. And I know what you're thinking. You think you know what a pizza roll is, but this is not that. This is something so much better. So I'm going to show you how to make it. All right, so first we're going to start making the dough because it needs time to rise. So we're going to get a cup of room temperature water, warm but not hot. And to that we're going to add a tablespoon of sugar. Now you can use, there's many different kinds of sugars you can use. You can use granulated sugar. You can use even like artificial sugars work. At least some of the ones I've tried, like stevia, things like that. You can even use brown sugar, coconut sugar, date sugar. You don't have to use regular sugar. And you're going to want to use a packet of instant yeast. I think it's about 2.5 teaspoons if you don't have little envelopes like this. And we're going to mix that in with this. All right, now we're going to let this sit until it starts to get foamy. Make sure that your yeast is active. Little hack, if you don't bake that often, you can just freeze your yeast and it will last longer. All right, now we're going to start with 2 cups of flour, but it can go from 2.5 to 3 cups of flour for this. It really depends. Sometimes I use less, sometimes I use more. I don't know why. That's just the way it works. We're going to add a teaspoon of salt and 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And now at this point you want to add whatever seasoning. So garlic powder, I don't have any garlic powder right now, but that's okay because I am making like a garlic butter topping for the top of the roll, so it will be garlicky still. But I would recommend garlic powder. If you have oregano, I'm going to be using Italian seasoning because that's what I have. Nutritional yeast works really good in this too. So I'm just going to eyeball the seasoning really. But I would say a teaspoon of garlic powder and like a tablespoon of whatever herbs, a couple tablespoons to 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast. All right, now we're going to mix this up. And I have another cup of flour off to the side that I will add a little bit at a time until I get the dough to form into a nice ball. And this is like what you're looking for. You want it to come together like a cohesive dough. It was about 2.5 cups of flour today. And your dough should be sticky, but not too sticky. So like it doesn't stick to my fingers, but it is tacky and it is sticking to the bowl. So now what we're going to do is we're going to roll this into a ball with our hands. We're going to coat it in olive oil and then we're going to cover it and let it rest. We want it to rise for 1 hour to 2 hours. Usually I let it rise for 1 hour, then I'll check on it. And if I want it to rise more, I'll let it go for another hour. In the meantime, you can chop up some garlic. This is a whole head of garlic that I chopped up. We're going to end up melting a stick of butter, a whole stick. Yes, I know, crazy. We're going to melt a whole stick of butter with the garlic in it. And then that's going to be put on top of the rolls. You don't have to use a whole stick of butter. We might not even use all that we make, but you can use it for other things too. It's really delicious and like in pasta or whatever. But that is a head of garlic, a stick of butter. All right, and this is the butter garlic mixture all melted, ready for its debut in this huge chunk of butter. But like I said, it's gonna melt in there, so I'm not too worried. All right, so we let this dough rise for about 1.5 hours and it is doubled. So now we're gonna need to flour a work surface to roll this out. All right, so floured work surface, floured rolling pin, we're gonna roll this out. We want this to be relatively thin, but not like paper thin. Remember, we're gonna be doing this and filling it with pizza filling. So it's kind of like how you would make a cinnamon roll. All right, and this is what we're looking for. That is the thickness. So now we're going to take our marinara or whatever pizza sauce you want. Or it could be pesto. Honestly, that would be good too. And we're going to smear that over the top like how we would a cinnamon roll. All right, this looks like a good smear for me. Now, you could add more than this. What I found is that if I add too much sauce, then it might, number one, it'll be very messy. Number two, it might leak out the bottom and get stuck on the bottom of the pan, kind of, I wouldn't say burn, but brown more than I'd like it to. Now we're going to fill it up with the rest of our pizza toppings. All right, so once you've got this dough rolled out, sauced, and topped with all of your choice of vegan toppings, we are going to roll it up. And just like I said, we're going to be doing this kind of like a cinnamon roll. So you're going to want to take this edge, pull it up on this long, I would do the lengthwise size. You can do it widthwise. They're just going to be much less rolls and very, very big rolls. And then we're basically going to just keep rolling this tight into a log. So we got this beautiful log here. So for these little corner pieces, I like to kind of tuck them in, kind of like it's an outie and you're poking it in to make it an innie. And we're going to do that to the other side. And then you're going to need a very, very sharp knife. If your dough is a little stickier, mine's fine. But if your dough is a little bit stickier, you can like coat it in some of this flour and then cut it. But we want to cut them in about to here because we are going to let this rise again. All right, and that is what we're looking like. Now you're going to want a casserole dish sized about yay. And we're going to take our little cut up rolls, and like I said, like the fourth time now in a row, we're going to set these in here kind of like you would pizza rolls. I mean cinnamon rolls. All right, and they are in the pan. So you want to, there is going to be space. That's good. You want there to be space because we're going to cover this with a towel and we're going to let it rise again for an hour to 2 hours. It took about an hour and a half last time, so I'm assuming it's going to take about the same amount. We want these to get nice and thick and fluffy. And then when we bake them, they're also going to get bigger. So keep that in mind. And we're going to want to preheat our oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, so it's been about an hour, and as you can see, they got nice and plump. So we're going to pop these in the oven, and we're going to bake them for 20 minutes. All right, and after 20 minutes, this is what we're looking like. So now comes the fun part. You can just top this with the garlic butter that we made earlier. That'll be great. I'm going to go extra, and I'm going to add some vegan cheese on top, and then the garlic butter. All right, so the cheese is on. It's already melting and sizzling. Now we're going to drizzle on our garlic butter. Like I said, you don't have to use all this. I probably will, though, just saying. And there she is. So I would recommend covering this with foil. Cover it with foil. Bake it for another 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, and then uncover it. And it should be good to go by then, but if you want to brown it a little bit, that's what I like to do. So I'm going to go ahead and cover it now. And in it goes. All right, and it's been 10 minutes, and look at that. Lots of butter and garlic and cheese. So like I said, you can just leave this as is if you want to. I'm going to pop it back in the oven for another 5 minutes to kind of brown up the top. You could broil it if you wanted to, too. Just make sure that if you do broil it, you keep an eye on it so it doesn't burn. All right, guys, and there she is. Beautiful. So we're going to let this cool for a little bit. And then I am going to pull out a piece so you can see what it looks like in all of its glory. So it is 5 minutes later. As you can see, all that butter that was like residual on the sides kind of just soaked in. You can see crispy pieces of garlic. Ugh, I'm going to pull one out. Oh my goodness. Look at how beautiful she is. Let's cut open so you can look at it from the inside. Oh my goodness. Look at that. These are such a treat. If you have never tried to make this like savory pizza version of a cinnamon roll, I highly recommend giving it a try. Not only is it delicious, but it's vegan. Even non-vegans love this. I hope you enjoy.